Hi, and welcome to the video. If you're trying to launch or accelerate a data career and are trying to understand how you can build an amazing project portfolio that will help you market yourself to employers, get that job interview, and eventually secure the role, then this is the video for you. We've got a great session as part of our January Jumpstart event with Enrique Ruiz, one of our instructors, and he's going to walk you through what goes into a great project, how you can package it up and host it for free, and then how you can market yourself to potential employers. And we'll also take Q&A from the audience at the end. It was a great session. Let's get into it.
So yeah, let's talk about how to build a rockstar analyst portfolio. So I think, especially now, it's become clearer than ever that the strongest asset that a data analyst can have is, at least to showcase their skills, is a project portfolio. The problem, though, is that the framework for building a strong project portfolio kind of remains unclear. So this session is just to try to remedy all that. So my goal here is going to be to help you create quality projects for a captivating portfolio and to get you that one step closer to landing your dream job. And I'm glad actually that we started by kind of outlining the different sessions for January Jumpstart, because a lot of those are the different elements that you need. Naturally, it's why we structured it that way, to land that job. So you've got the resume, you've got the LinkedIn profile, and you've got the portfolio, all to help you get that interview so that then you can ace it and get that job. And John, I'm glad that you mentioned that you thought that this was one of the most important, maybe not sessions, but at least elements as far as the project portfolio. And I'll tell you guys why. I'm actually willing to bet that all of you have a resume and a LinkedIn profile, but that not even half of you have a project portfolio. So without even me having to start about the specific reasons why they're so important, just that alone, the fact that it becomes a differentiator between you and other candidates is why these are so powerful, especially now that not everyone has one. So with that said, let me start sharing my screen here and let's go through my presentation. All right. So why, aside from being a key differentiator, do you need a portfolio? Well, the obvious reason is that it helps you prove that you actually have these skills for the job. Again, resumes and LinkedIn profiles can help tell employers about your skills, but they don't do anything towards actually proving that. But project portfolios allow you to actually show them what you are capable, and that is very powerful. Now, a great project portfolio should highlight that technical proficiency, which is most of what you think about when you talk about skills for the job. You know, whether you're good at Excel, Power BI, SQL, Tableau, maybe Python. But there are also other elements that portfolios are great at highlighting that will also get you closer to that job. So number 2 and 3 is strategic thinking and communication skills. And for anyone that's taken our Thinking Like an Analyst course, you'll notice that these 3 elements actually make up the analytics trifecta, which is really what separates a good analyst, or a great analyst, sorry, from just a normal or average one. And I'd argue that outlining the strategic thinking and the communication skills in your portfolio will also make it differentiated from just a regular good old project portfolio. It should also highlight your business acumen. And this is important, especially if you're using your portfolio to apply for maybe an industry that you haven't worked with in the past. You can try to incorporate projects from that specific industry within your portfolio, and whoever is looking at it will then know that you already have some of those business chops that will be required on the actual job. And finally, and this one isn't brought up that often, but it's just to highlight the passion that you may have for analytics and just your overall personality as a person. Because when you're applying for a job, you don't just want to show the hiring manager or whoever's interviewing you or looking at your application that you have, the skills that they're looking for and that you're the right team, the right fit for the role, but also that you're just the right fit for the team and the company. So you can really use your project portfolio. And I think this is even better than maybe not so much a LinkedIn profile, but at least for the resume, and just showing who you are beyond just being the analyst that you're trying to show. So these are the 5 points that I'd recommend that you try to highlight through your portfolio. And what I actually like about these 5 is that they're typically things that people list as their skills in a resume anyway. You'll try to show your proficiency, and then you'll probably even use the word strategic thinking, communication skills, business acumen, and passion as your soft skills. You'll list them in your resume, but this is your chance to actually show those and prove them as well. So that's why you need a portfolio. And I want to quickly highlight that with some examples here. Say that you are a hiring manager and you're looking to hire one of these 2 analysts. And if you were just looking at their resumes, it's honestly very hard to differentiate between them. Sure, it looks like John maybe has some SQL. Well, actually, it looks like Stacy does as well. They both have Excel in there, Power BI. And maybe, John has Python and R where Stacy has Tableau, and that can maybe help make your decision. But beyond that, there's not a lot more that you learn from this. And you certainly couldn't say which one was the better or more talented analyst. Now, if I were to show you Stacy's portfolio, then at least you have a much better idea about what her skills are and what she brings to the table as an analyst. And even more so, if we actually jump into one of her projects. Now, it's very clear to see that not only do they have some very strong Excel skills, as they can be displayed here, but you also get a very clear sense of her communication skills, her strategic thinking, her business acumen, and some of her personality as well. So that's why this is so powerful, because right off the bat, if you were to have to choose between one of the 2, well, you'd go for Stacy in this case, especially if John doesn't even have a portfolio to begin with, which, remember, most people actually won't when you're applying. So now that you're convinced of why you should have a project portfolio, you might be wondering, well, how do you actually go about packaging one or creating it? Well, there are a number of options out there for building and managing portfolios, but ideally you want to look for a solution that meets the following criteria. So it needs to be easily shareable, clear and consumable, publicly accessible, easy to manage, and free or at least cheap to host. Now, in the past, most people would use some combination of, maybe GitHub, their LinkedIn profiles, maybe they create a personal website, or use tool-specific tools like Tableau Public or Power BI to showcase their work. But the good news, and this is going to seem like a shameless plug, but I'll give you my arguments for it, is that now here at Maven, we actually created a project portfolio specifically for data analysts that we call the Maven Analytics Showcase. So again, it's a purpose-built platform for data professionals to showcase their work, share their projects with peers and employers, and connect with top analytics talent around the world. And I don't just mention this because it's ours. I truly believe that it's the best solution out there for creating your project portfolio online. And it's because we actually took all those elements that I just talked about into consideration when building it. So it makes your project portfolio easily shareable, clear and consumable, publicly accessible, easy to build and manage, and it is completely free to create and to host. So now you know why you need one. Now you know where to create one. Now let's just talk about the keys to actually making sure that when you create your project portfolio, it's a successful one, right? So number 1, what you want to do is keep your about section brief and original. Now I wrote key here, but that's actually keep, and that might come up later because you don't want to make any typos when you're going through yours. But your about section is going to be your first hook. And it's going to be used to display your passion for analytics as well as some communication skills. Now, it's very easy to write, a few paragraphs about, who you are, but it's a lot harder to be concise. And that's a very important way where you can very clearly start flexing those communication skills at the beginning. If you can, put across who you are in something that people can read in a very short space of time. Because for anyone that was present during John's resume section last week, you'll know that you don't get a lot of, attention time from whoever is reviewing either your resume or your portfolio. So if you keep your about section brief, it will guarantee that they'll read it completely and everything that you wanted to share actually comes across. So use that first hook wisely. So here's an example from Stacy. Again, I just really like her portfolio. We'll come back to that later. But So we've got her about section here, self-proclaimed data mom who feels that a relaxing weekend can include analyzing your kid's Lego collection. I'm passionate about all things data and try to share that enthusiasm in my work and with others. So again, very clear, very concise. You can tell that this person clearly has a passion for analytics, not just because she said so explicitly, but because she actually spends her free time, analyzing stuff, in this case, her kid's Lego collection. So I don't know about you guys, but to me, this seems like a person that would be fun to work with. And in this case, I can actually confirm it since we work with Stacy here at Maven, and she's awesome. Now, number 2, take advantage of the header image real estate. Now, anyone that looks at your portfolio is going to glance at this. The header is what you have at the top of your profile. You see this in things like Facebook and LinkedIn as well. So whether someone intends to or not, their eyes are going to go there. So try to add in a little bit more information about yourself in there. We're looking at an example here. We've got Gerard Duggan. You'll see that he's got some, keywords like data storytelling, visualization, and analytics, as well as his name. And then he's got, his Excel and his Power BI credentials and some of his Maven badges, including the fact that he's a Hall of Famer and that he's won multiple challenges. And finally, use engaging project titles and excerpts. Now, you can't pay off your entire project in a few seconds, but what you can do in that time is get someone interested enough to click into it. And I'll show you some examples here. But before I take a look at those, you'll notice that in these 3 elements, your about section, your header image, and just the project titles, it's very hard to highlight all the elements that we talked about, right? You're not really going to highlight any technical proficiency there. It's hard to talk about strategic thinking there, or business acumen. So because it's so hard, you shouldn't even try it because you're not going to be successful. What you want to use your portfolio landing page for is precisely to just use those 6 seconds of attention that you have from whoever's reviewing it, so that they actually want to take one step deeper and take a look at your projects. And that's where the meat of everything happens, and that's where you can pay off all of the other elements. But your landing page should be used to actually get people there. So make sure to focus your attention there. And I'll show you a few here. You'll see we've got Mark Cunningham, another challenge winner. Actually, Stacy, Gerard, and Mark are all challenge winners from Maven. We'll talk about that in a few minutes as well. But you'll see that he's got very interesting project titles here: powering up my resume with Power BI and the Force. For anyone that's a Star Wars fan, can kind of draw you in. And it's funny, Mark actually landed a job using this resume. It's a resume he built in Power BI to kind of both work as a resume and also to show that the skills that he talks about he's able to execute on. And the hiring manager at that time was actually a huge Star Wars fan. So his resume here has a toggle that lets you, turn it into just normal English or Star Wars version. And that helped him, connect with the hiring manager, and in that case landed him a job, which is just a great example of, making your personality shine through here. You'll see he's got a very clear, concise about section here. And then he's got some other very interesting projects, Maven Airlines, the world's most prestigious airline. But is it? Just asking that question makes you want to click on it and just look at the rest of the project to see, if in fact it is. Same here with Harry Potter. Who really was the hero of the Harry Potter story? I'm personally a big Harry Potter fan, so maybe this is more interesting to me than to some of you. But I just think the way that he's framing everything here, he's not trying to pay anything off. He just wants you to take a look at the project where he's actually going to demonstrate all of his value and his skills as an analyst. So those are my 3 pro tips to a successful project portfolio or project portfolio landing page. And now, once you actually get people to click into your project, let's talk about the elements of actually building a winning project, because it's a very different thing to have a successful project or to do a great project and to actually communicate it in a way that it comes across as a successful project. I'd actually argue that it would be better to have a bad project presented very well than to have a good project presented poorly, at least to whoever's reading it. So it's very important to keep that in mind. If you spent, days or months working on a project, make sure you spent, I'm not going to say almost the same amount of time, but that you give it the effort and the time that it needs to actually make sure that you present it in a way that is worthy of the actual project you put together. Otherwise, honestly, it's all in vain. So let's talk about these elements. On a high level, you want to start with the business case, then show your insights and impact, use data to tell the story, and then provide some technical depth. And it should be clear and easily consumable, just like your portfolio landing page, and guide the viewer through your thought process and your approach. So what was the business case or context behind the project? What key insights were you able to derive and what impact did they have on the business? How are you using data and visualization to tell the story or support your findings? And what technical tools or techniques did you use to conduct the analysis? Now let's dive deeper into each one of these. So let's start with the business case. And this is important because you might get overexcited or overeager to just kind of present all of your technical skills, but a lot of the times your audience isn't going to be, a fellow analyst that is interested in just getting down to the nitty gritty. So you may lose your audience if you dive straight into the technical stuff. So you want to lead with a high level context, including a description of the business case and the problem that you solved. And that way you're setting the stage properly for everything that's to follow. So here are some examples. And a pro tip here again is just to lead with the business context so that you're speaking the language of potential employers and you keep those non-technical audiences engaged. Now, once that you've started with that business case and you've set the stage, now it's time to actually show your insights and impact. So again, the audience is aware of the context. You want to describe the key insights that you derived in your analysis and the impact that they drove for the business. And whenever possible, try to actually quantify that impact so that people are able to see exactly the results of your analysis and how they were able to help the business or solve the problem. So here are some examples as well. And pro tip, again, include those tangible, measurable results. Next, once you have the beginning, which is the business case, and the end, which is the insights and the impacts that you have, you want to tie those two together, right? How did you get from point A to point B? And you want to use the actual data to tell that story. So the next step is to take it a level deeper and use data-driven storytelling to bring that analysis to life. And this is where those communication skills will really shine. So what you want to do is use data visualization whenever possible. You don't want to show, raw code or data tables. Charts and graphs are really your best friend here when it comes to communicating data and insights clearly to anyone. You want to focus on data that directly supports the business case and the outcome. You may have done some analysis as part of the project that didn't really make it to the end result or doesn't really have anything to do with the insights and impacts. No matter how proud of that, peripheral analysis you may be, you don't need to show it if it doesn't directly contribute to tying those A and B points together. And finally, again, showcase your written and visual communication skills and focus on telling a clear and logical story. What you don't want to do is go into the technical weeds yet. Most of the time people aren't really interested in, how you wrote that formula or all the different, techniques that you may know in Excel or SQL and Power BI. The main idea here and what you should be focusing on is to make it evident that you are able to generate good ideas and good solutions to the problem that you outlined and that you have enough technical chops to execute on them. But you don't have to explicitly show all that. You also don't want to try to include everything because that's just going to distract from your best points. And you don't want to be like me and write poorly or make careless spelling or grammatical errors, same as with the resume, same as with your LinkedIn profile. It's just unprofessional and you want to stay away from that. So make sure to double check your work and use peer reviews whenever possible. I know I've already talked about Stacy a bunch, but there's one of her projects that she actually did it's actually that Lego analysis that she talked about in her About section, where she went through a series of peer review sessions with actually one of our bootcamp alumni, Lisa Verka. I don't know if you guys know her. And she just goes to outline, I think in a blog post, just how much that peer review helped her come out with a much more successful project in the end. And if anything, it's just going to help you, correct those maybe mistakes that you didn't notice were there because, you were too busy putting everything together. And finally, provide some technical depth. So I know I've said this a bunch, but portfolio projects should be designed to appeal to a broad audience, but they can include links or deep dives specifically tailored to those looking for more technical depth. Now, this shouldn't be a critical part of your project. And what I mean by that is that if you take this away, everything should still work perfectly fine and as intended. But for those people that have finished and are interested in more, then you can include it just so that they can see those aspects of it as well. So some examples here are, downloadable workbooks or project files, maybe some code samples or GitHub links. You can embed Power BI or Tableau dashboards to your project, and you can write, blog posts or technical tutorials or video walkthroughs, kind of as a supplement to your project. And I'll show you a few examples of those in a second. And the pro tip here is to, again, make the detail available to those who want it, like a fellow analyst maybe, without overwhelming those who don't, like a recruiter or a hiring manager. And that's how you put a good project together. Now, at this point, you know why you need a portfolio, you know where to host it, you know how to, where to focus your landing page, and you know how to create a winning project. But maybe you have no projects or no experience to begin with, though. So how are you even going to start doing this? Well, let's talk about how to find projects, because I've got some good or bad news, depending on how you want to look at it. Having no prior experience is no excuse whatsoever. There are a number of ways to find projects for your portfolio, just online or even on our site, and I want to highlight some of those. So you've got course projects, you've got our new guided projects that we just launched as well, and we've got our data challenges, and those kind of go in increasing levels of difficulty. So most courses, I don't know if you've taken any at Maven Analytics, are hands-on and project-based. Every single one of our courses is going to include a project that you'll be completing along with us. So what you can do is actually use those as you learn to create, start creating your portfolio and start putting together projects for your portfolio. Now, a common question that we get is, is it really fair or valid to, include a project that I really just completed by following along with someone else as part of my portfolio? And my answer is, I think so. I think it's completely valuable. I think it's worth owning up to the fact that you completed the project by following along with some course. And it's always even more valuable to try to put your own spin on things, just so that you don't have the same project as everyone else that completed it. But again, and I think this is where, again, a key differentiator comes in and something that people overlook. Remember, it's one thing to actually complete the project. You'll follow along with the course, you'll come out with a finished dashboard, but it's another thing completely to actually present that project in a way that's engaging and clear and highlights all of your skills. So even just that will differentiate you from the rest of the people that completed that project with the course. But if you're looking for something a little bit more personalized, well, then you can take a look at our guided projects, which are really industry-specific projects that we curated as the instructors that will help you. They're designed to let you build confidence by solving a set of predefined tasks for an industry problem, and then only use guidance when necessary. So if you're stuck at one part, you can take a look at our solution videos, but you don't need to by any means. In fact, you don't even need to complete them in the same tool that we do during the solution videos. So that's something that's definitely worth checking out. I'll show you an example of one of those as well in a few minutes, and how they took the original project and expanded on it to just make it that much better. And finally, what could be viewed as the highest level of difficulty are our data challenges. So we at Maven create monthly data challenges, and then we kind of judge the entries and select a winner at the end of roughly each month. And each challenge comes with a real-world prompt that allows you to apply your skills, showcase your work, and win those prizes. So here, there's no strict guidance into actually solving the problem. We just state, the business case, the problem that we want you to solve, and we provide the data, and then it's up to you to see how you solve that. So this is a really good kind of real-world use case that you can grab to start building some really neat portfolio projects, and I'll show you some examples of those as well. And of course, if you have some project that you've created in your own work, please use those. Always be careful. Ask if you're allowed to, share that with the world. Maybe you'll need to anonymize the data. Maybe you'll need to pretend it's for a different industry or change some things around. But it's always valid. You can, maybe ask around. There's some nonprofits around you that they'll have data that you can help out with. There's tons of ways to find data for projects if you don't have any right now. So it's no excuse not having a portfolio because you don't have any previous work or experience. And that's all you need. So let's wrap things up with our key takeaways here. Number one, project portfolios are the best way to prove your analytics skills. Remember, employers want to see that you have what it takes to get the job done, and not just that you're saying that you have all the skills that they're looking for. Number two, find or create your own projects. If you don't have job experience, you can use free online data sources to create your own projects or seek out real-world volunteer opportunities. Number three, use the Maven platform to build, host, and share your project portfolio. Remember, it's free, it's publicly accessible, and we built it specifically for data professionals to showcase their skills. And finally, make sure that your communication skills and your personality shine through. I'd argue this is one of the most important things. You want to use your portfolio to showcase your strategic thinking, communication skills, and not just the technical proficiency. And that's all I have as far as presentation. I think this might be a good spot to stop and maybe answer some of the questions you'll have before I actually jump into some examples, show you guys around Showcase, show some projects that you can draw inspiration from, and some profiles that I think can help get you started, or you can use as benchmarking opportunities. So I'll stop there. Let me stop sharing. And let's see if we can take a look at some of the questions. I don't know if you have some outline, John.
Awesome. Yeah, I mean, I've been able to keep up with a lot of them in the chat, but I would recommend, this is a perfect time if you've got questions, try to use the questions tab we have here. That way, folks can kind of upvote, and Enrique can actually, or I can basically bring them on screen, and everybody can see the question that's being answered. So there's one here I think we can bring on right now. Okay, yeah. I mean, I'm probably the perfect person to answer this one for you. So Brittany's asking, she's got a data set from Kaggle. She wants to use SQL. She doesn't have a SQL server. So what I would recommend, what I always recommend folks in this instance do is use MySQL and their suite of projects, because one, MySQL is free. You can go to mysql.com. You can download 2 pieces of software that are both free and also are both like really powerful, and people will also use on the job. And that's going to be MySQL Community Server, that will actually be a server that just runs locally on your own machine. So you have to be able to install software, but you can do that on a Mac, on PC. You can do it on Linux. Whatever you're running, you should be in good shape. So that's where you host the server, and then you'll want to download MySQL Workbench, which that's the SQL editor where you'll connect to the server, and you will you'll write your queries, you'll manage your tables, you'll create new tables, things like that. So that's actually what we do for our courses, where I teach SQL for Maven. And if you're in the courses, like if you have a subscription, we walk you through the install and download, but it's pretty straightforward, so you guys can do that. So definitely go to MySQL. If for anybody else who has like a different piece of software that they use at work, if you can create tables and stuff there, you can use that too. But MySQL is great because you don't have to rely on your company server. So yeah, Enrique, any others that popped up? I see a lot of questions popping up, which is awesome.
So I've got one here. I guess, John, you answered a SQL question, so I figured I'd go for an Excel one. Any suggestions for demonstrating Excel skills in a portfolio? So similar to Power BI and Tableau, we have the option to embed Excel Online workbooks on your projects. And that is great, and because people can click through them and look at the formula, so that you don't have to get screenshots of them to kind of try to do those technical flexes. I think embedding those, Power BI, Tableau, Excel workbooks directly onto the Showcase do a great job of indirectly showing people that you do have the technical skills, because they can evidently see there that it maybe wasn't something that was very easy to put together. But for Excel, I think it is a little bit less effective than Power BI and Tableau. Those are purposely built so that you actually share them that way. Excel workbooks can get a little bit clunky when you try to share. So I think for these, Excel is such a powerful and really underrated visualization tool that I think the best way to do that is don't show any formulas, any of that. Just like talk about, again, where you started, the problems that you wanted to solve. Maybe you can outline some of the hurdles that you had to go through, and by saying like, I needed to use formulas to overcome this obstacle in my analysis, without necessarily having to show them. But really, it's just about paying off all of that story with just charts and graphs, and like using those visual storytelling tricks. If you need any help with that, Chris has a great charts and graphs course. I've got my advanced dashboard designs course, which is really focused on storytelling. And I think Excel, maybe a lot more so than some of the other tools, is really good at just putting together really quick visuals, copying and pasting those as images, and then just getting those into your projects. And I can show you some examples from my own portfolio if that helps in a few minutes. Awesome. That's a great question.
That's great. Yeah, we could switch off, Enrique, if that feels right.
Yeah.
Awesome. Okay, great. So links to good Maven portfolio. So let me share just like an easy way that you guys can do this and sort of explore on your own. So if you take a look at the, so I've got the Maven showcase right here. It's mavenanalytics.io/showcase. And you can also, up in the top, I actually can't see my cursor right now, but up in the top navigation at mavenanalytics.io, you can always click on showcase. And so if you come in here, you see a whole bunch of people's projects. Right now, the default is always going to be trending, and trending is like a combination of things that are new and have a lot of interaction and likes from the community. But if you want to see just some of like the most popular all-time projects, I think that's a really great way to see things on here. And you'll see a few people near the top that, like, Gerard has an amazing portfolio. It's an example, Enrique and I always use. Jasmine, another really, really good one right there. Stefano's got a bunch of awesome projects. So Jonathan's got some amazing stuff in here. So like, for example, if we wanted to click in here, you can click into that specific project. And then if you want to see the entire portfolio, you just click on the person's name, and then you'll see all of their projects there. So that's probably my best way to answer that one, is just go to the showcase and take a look at that.
All right, I've got another one here. So I already have 3 years of work experience as a data analyst. Do I still need to add projects in my resume or my portfolio? I think I love that question because my answer would be clearly yes. But I think mostly it highlights that barrier of entry that comes to actually creating a project portfolio, because I think that's a very common question that most people will have, and what will actually cause them to do is just to not create one, right? And what that leads to is just to not have people that have project portfolios, which leads to people that do being able to differentiate themselves from the rest. And I think one thing that again, not enough people say out loud about project portfolios is that they're really, really hard to put together. And that isn't necessarily the case anymore for resumes, for example, because anyone can go into ChatGPT and say, hey, I've got these skills, I'm looking for this job. Like, can you put together a resume for me? Copy, paste it, do some tweaks, do some peer editing if you want to. And it's not going to take you nearly as long as it would to create projects, like actually complete projects, then put them together in a way that you want to present them, then host them in your portfolio. So just the difficulty in putting that together, and I'll highlight that through some examples, maybe even through my own, because I don't completely love my portfolio, just because it's hard to put in the time, and I haven't put in the time that I wish I did. So just like actually going through that effort, I'd recommend to anyone, because it really is what is going to set you apart, because not a lot of people are putting in that time, because it's just hard. And if you do it, it'll just give you that boost.
Awesome. I'll take this one that I think is pretty quick. So this is from Humama, good at Python and SQL, but don't know much about Power BI. That's okay. You could say the same about me, except I'm not very good at Python either. So I think the good news is Python and SQL are like crazy high demand skills. If I had to pick two to be really good at, like to be employable right now, those are very high on the list. The other two I would probably pick are Power BI and Excel personally. So what I would recommend, if you're excited to learn Power BI, you could definitely do that, and it's a really good complement. It's probably like the next most differentiating skill that you could have right now. If you're not as excited about that and you want like a faster route to create some visuals in your portfolio, you could just start using charts and graphs in Excel. That's what I have done for most of my career. I've never been a Power BI creator. I'm a passive consumer of Power BI. I mostly have leveraged SQL and Excel my entire career. A tiny bit of Tableau very early on, but not in about 10 years. So that's what I would recommend there is either go for Power BI or go for Excel. But if you want to show off your work, it's hard to do it with just code. And even just like doing the job is a little bit harder. Like if you were to say, hey, I can't really create charts, which you can do in Python, but it's typically a little bit more cumbersome. Do something where you can visualize the story that you're finding, because that is actually, it's not just about marketing yourself. That's an important part of the job of a data analyst. So hope that helps.
Yeah, I've got one here as well from Brandon. How would you suggest choosing a project big enough to push yourself, but not so big that you get overwhelmed trying to learn several skills at once? That's a great question. And actually the precise question that we had in mind when we decided to put together guided projects. I kind of showed that bridge in the previous slide, but you've got the course projects, which maybe aren't, big enough to push yourself or not, right? Like it doesn't meet the challenging end. And we had the data challenges, which people tended to get overwhelmed with, right? You get analysis paralysis by just looking at a huge data set, a few questions, and like, how do I put it all together? But with guided projects, it's really just like you're not going to be building like an entire dashboard from scratch. It's about almost answering a very concise question. That is for a specific tool. So you're not going to be having to learn several skills at once, but they're still challenging enough that it'll take you at least a few hours to put together. So I highly suggest taking a look at those. And I'll show you some examples from my own work as well later. But sometimes, again, right now, like dashboard is like the trending topic, and everyone wants to build these like huge reports or these gigantic pipelines. But sometimes just something as simple as like putting together a single visual that tells a very like compelling narrative from data that you find. If you can even find maybe there's a chart that you saw in the news that you liked during a YouTube video that you watched, just like putting your own spin on it and just like presenting it. I think like that is plenty. And most of my projects are that. I used to do this thing called Makeover Monday, where they share publicly available data, they'd show the original visual, and the task was to give it a makeover. And just that like gets you flexing all the right, I think, skills without it being this huge piece of work that will take you forever to complete.
Awesome. Basically, the short of this one is, where can I find data sets? I'll give you kind of three options. So obviously we're talking our own book here and plugging our product. Maven Analytics has two things that you should be aware of: guided projects, and then the data playground, which are very much related. The data playground was the original feature that we put out there, which is basically an open, free, publicly available set of data where you go in to mavenanalytics.io /data-playground, and you can see a whole bunch of data sets that we have. It's filterable, and each of those data sets comes with a recommended analysis prompt as well. So it's for somebody who's a beginner, I think this is the best option. For somebody else who has like a very specific need, like say you need data on like hotel booking availability at different times of year or something like that. Like if you're going for a specific domain where you want a job in a specific area and you want to show off some really relevant analysis for that job, data playground's maybe not quite as good as some of the two other options that I'll give you. So Kaggle is amazing for that because they've got legitimately over 100,000 data sets. I mean, it's multiple 100,000 at this point, and it's pretty searchable as well. So Kaggle is really good. It's kaggle.com. And then the second one that's equally as broad, but maybe slightly less easy to, the UX isn't quite as good, I think, for personally, my opinion, for filtering and searching, is data.world. But those two are amazing if you've got something very specific. If you're just a beginner and you're like, I just want to analyze something to start building the muscles, go to Data Playground for Maven Analytics. It's free. You don't even need an account for that one. It's not like behind a sign in. You could just download the CSVs. So hope that helps.
Let's see, I've got one more here. If you were to choose top 3 technical skills, what would they be? I'd say the ability to work with and clean large data sets, the ability to summarize those large data sets into very concise pieces of easily digestible information, and the ability to present those summaries in a visual way so that anyone can understand them clearly. Those are mine.
Awesome. Here, any tips on how to build a business case on your own if you've found some interesting data to work with online? So assuming like we're talking about business data here, sometimes people get confused, kind of overcomplicate this. So businesses typically are kind of looking for a very short number of things at the end of the day. How can you make me more money? How can you save me money? Potentially, how can you save me time? How can you make my customers happier? Things like that. And it starts with the money, and then the time and the customers thing is interesting, but always ask about revenue and costs. So try to figure out how you can go from this data that you found, leverage something smart in that data to make a recommendation that makes or saves the business more money. And again, that's great for a project. That's also the job. That's what we are here to do as analysts. And that's why they're willing to pay our salaries, because we can do that for businesses. So that's where you're going to add the value. So don't overcomplicate it. Just try to make the business money or save the business money is a great place to start.
All right, we've got another one here. What looks better on a portfolio? A few really deep analyses with multiple skills and tools, or a wide portfolio showcasing more projects that are more focused on 1 or 2 skills each? I'd say if you're getting started, it's easier to work with the more digestible kind of smaller projects. Because it will get you to a more complete portfolio earlier. I'd say try to shoot for at least 3 projects in your portfolio so that you can consider it, complete, let's say. It's kind of like as a rule of thumb. And if you're working on these huge projects, then it's just going to take you longer to get there. And B, if you're working on these shorter projects, it's going to be a lot easier for you to actually communicate those clearly, right? Because they're just simpler, period. If you're working on this like really deep analysis, it's going to take you longer to explain, and you're more likely going to want to use those like technical flexes more often, just because it was that much more challenging, and that might get in your way of actually communicating it the way that you're meant to, and that's simpler. So I'd start with the easier pieces, and that's just going to get you more prepared to completing those harder ones next, or those deeper ones. And by the time that you get there, you'll just be much better at presenting them as well.
Awesome. So question here from Julie. Seemed like Tableau was the lead data viz platform, but now Power BI is more important. Thoughts? Yeah. So I don't know if it's necessarily more important. I do think I would recommend learning it to somebody who, if you're starting brand new. And basically what the dynamic here is, Tableau was definitely the king at first. And there's some people that would still say Tableau is better for certain things, like the data visualization options might be a little bit better for Tableau. Power BI, the kind of like the data pipeline stuff might be a little bit better. It's easier to, work with Microsoft Excel, things like that. But the dynamic that I'm more interested in terms of helping people with their careers and building skills and launching a career is the fact that Tableau was by far the market share king for a long time. And then Power BI has come from behind and basically got to parity and even pulled ahead a little bit in terms of how many businesses are using it. And so when you think about that dynamic, Tableau's been around a long time. A lot of people have learned Tableau. Power BI has really accelerated. What that means is there's lots of businesses using it and kind of not enough pilots, not enough analysts who are really good at it. So that's what the dynamic means for you in terms of if you had to learn a skill. If you're already in a business that uses Tableau, don't listen to that advice. Definitely learn Tableau and get your hands on the data that you have solving real business problems while someone is paying you. That's the best thing you can ever do, is just do data while you're getting paid at your company, however way possible. If you are, if you're on the fence and you don't have access to this at a company or a school, I would say I would go Power BI because of that come from behind dynamic and the sort of shortage on the talent side.
All right, let's see. How long should one take to complete a guided project or challenge? I personally struggle sticking to a set time for a task as I redo things, trying to decide on what is best or perfect. So a task that should take me an hour might take me 5. I love this question, and I love the fact that it mentions the word perfect. And I'll quote Alice here, who's another one of our colleagues at Maven, that always uses, the phrase of don't let perfectionism get in the way of progress. And one thing that she preaches, especially as part of like this analyst or data scientist workflow, is taking what is called the MVP approach, which is minimum viable product. And essentially what that means is that it's all about iteration. So don't try to complete like the full version of the project in the first pass. Try to get to a version of it that like is, a minimum viable version, like something that works, even though it's not perfect or it's not the best thing to do. Maybe you didn't analyze it, like you didn't use or like format all the visuals correctly, or, applied all the dynamic filters you wanted to, but it gets you to an answer or some sort of solution to the problem. And then just iterate, go back, redo, and then continue to improve. And that way, like at least in a very early version of this, you'll have something that you can present if you've run out of time, versus spending, the entire time you had allotted for it, not even getting to, finish cleaning the data and then having nothing to show for it. So I think that's a good way to start. It's just iteration. And that's going to get you not just quicker improvements, but I think ultimately a better end result. As for like how long for guided projects, usually like we try to create them for about 1 to 2 hours, maybe 3 to complete for the harder ones. A challenge that will vary, and depending on just how much effort you want to put into it, but I wouldn't be surprised if people spend, upwards of 10 hours, or winners that have spent 5 or 4 or 3 hours. That really just depends.
Awesome. I've got a, I've got a very quick one. If a project is from another challenge, not Maven, there's other folks who've launched challenges now too. Can you include it? Absolutely. Yeah, we're not going to kick you out for doing something with somebody else. If you think it's great work and it sells your skills well, get it on that portfolio. That's why this exists. It's here to help you. So yeah, there's no gatekeeping on that at all.
There's a ton of questions on here. I don't know if we want to keep answering, John. I wanted to share a few things on our site, just to show some examples. I don't know if there's any other questions here that I still want to answer.
I could take this last one here, I guess, because I think this is a good one from Anne-Marie. So thoughts on best networking tasks to take at your current job. So I think when you're on a job, it's always really interesting to kind of look at what's like a scarcity at the company. What does it feel like the company is lacking there? If there's a whole lot of people that work at the company and there's like one person that can do this one thing, and that person seems really, really overloaded, like maybe that's Python, maybe that's SQL, maybe that's Power BI. It's probably a good idea to cozy up with that person and become friends with them. And potentially that's like, if you're trying to do well within that company and make a name for yourself, that's a really good skill to focus on. And that's what we try to advise, like kind of in the broader marketplace too, is like, you want to build the skills that there's a shortage of, right? Because you need skills that are both valuable and rare. If they're valuable and everybody has them, then people don't need you. But if the skills are valuable and rare, and that can be applied in the broader marketplace, and it can also be applied at a specific company, those are the people that the marketplace values and that the company really, really value. So go with rare and valuable. would be, I know it's not probably exactly what you were asking, but hopefully it answers the first part of it.
There we go. Sorry.
Perfect.
Yeah, I just wanted to show a few final examples to pay off some of the points. So again, Maven Showcase, you'll actually notice that the first featured project here is the past winner from our Maven challenges, which was the Power Outage Challenge. And I wanted to just showcase how good of a job Katie did at actually following those, like the framework for a winning project. If you go to the About This Project section, you start off with the objective, then you pay off the methods and the insights that you got from it, and then you use data visualization to pay all of that off, and even at the end show the data model and some of the assumptions if anyone's really interested in that. And then you've got the embedded dashboard in here, so you can see. I mean, this is a great piece of work naturally because it was a challenge winner, but this is one example of using data that we provided, in this case a challenge, to put together what is really a killer project for your portfolio. After that, I wanted to show Justine's because this is from one of our guided projects. And the interesting thing here, if I pull up the dashboard, is that in the guided project, this is one of Chris's, all that they make is this chart here. But you'll notice that what they did is actually expand on that. They added some other KPIs and areas for improvement, the overall satisfaction, and then some recommendations. So that's another great way of taking one of the guided projects and then just pushing it one step further to make it just that much of a better project. And finally, I want to show this one here as well, which is a great example of taking a course project, in this case from our Power BI desktop course, but making it your own. And this really provides, I don't know if anyone of you has taken the Power BI desktop course, you'll notice the data set and maybe some of the KPIs and some of the layout in there, but it's not exactly the same. So that's a good way of differentiating, I think, by still just grabbing, what is a course project. And if you didn't know that it was, and maybe if I hadn't mentioned it, and you're just looking at someone that created this, you're thinking, wow, like this is displaying some really great skills as an analyst. Now, as far as profiles to gain inspiration from, I know John already mentioned Gerard. I think this is a great one. There's a great diversity of projects here as well. And I think just what he does and what Marginline does, which I'll show in a second, and that you can learn from, is just reading through how they present their project. And I know there was a question that we didn't answer in the questions here. That was, what's the difference between when I mentioned completing a project and presenting it? What I meant by that is that it's one thing for Gerard to create his dashboard, which is the project itself, and it's another thing for him to create what is his project inside of his portfolio, which is maybe all of this down here. And I think here is where you're kind of talking about what you did. And I think that's what's the most important thing here in your portfolio, because you want to be able to communicate what you did to complete the project, which isn't just evident from looking at the end result. So I'd highly recommend just reading through some of Gerard's entries, some of Marginline's projects. Honestly, you'll learn a lot just like as an analyst, period. I learn a lot from looking at their stuff all the time, and it'll give you some good best practices into how to present the projects that you've actually completed. I know John mentioned Yasmin as well. He's got some great stuff, and I think he's one of the better examples of how to let your personality shine through and your passion for data show in your projects. You can clearly tell that he's a very funny, very clever guy, beyond being a supremely talented analyst. And another example of that is Leia, who's gotten some really good projects here. There's one here on just like their personal Goodread data from the books that they've read. And this is one of those great examples where I think it's always important to pick like a passion project, even if it's something that is related to no industry that you'd ever want to work with, and it's just with fun data. Because again, creating these portfolios is hard work. And if the work that you're actually having to do is something you're not even interested in to begin with, then it's just going to make it that much harder. But if you're picking passion projects like this one, for example, which also does just a great job in highlighting her technical proficiency, it's just going to make it that much easier for you to put the time in. So that's a final suggestion. I'm just going to show you mine at the end, just because you'll notice that I don't have that many. And a lot of it, like these are from my courses, which are the most like fleshed out dashboards. But the others that I put together on my own time are really just those examples of putting like a very small project together of there's a data set with these moving, with this, moving company that publishes annual study on migration patterns. This is the original visual. I just gave it my makeover, and it took me like no more than a few hours to actually create the chart, no more than a few hours to put this together, and now it's just this brand new project and more portfolio. So it doesn't have to be this huge challenge or this huge workload that you have to go through to put these together. So again, all I'm really trying to say here is there's no excuses. It doesn't have to be that hard, but it is just a matter of picking projects that you like, that might resonate to the jobs that you're trying to apply for, getting something together. And once you create the project, make sure that you put the effort it deserves into, communicating it within the project page itself, because that's what the recruiting manager is going to be reading. So that's my pitch.
Awesome. Well, I think we're a little bit over time. We had what might be record attendees today. It's going to be pretty close from last week. Really, really awesome to see that. So I want to give you guys a couple of things before we go. I'm going to drop the registration link for Thursday. Let me get that private registration here. So please don't share this with anybody. This is something that really, it's only for you folks who have attended here. If for anybody who dropped off, we'll also email this, but you guys can get first crack at it. So on Thursday, it's going to be a smaller workshop where we'll have you all walk through some actual project portfolios with folks. So what we are asking is, in order to participate on this, you will need to use the project showcase. You'll need to have at least 3 projects, and then you'll fill out this link via a type form, which we'll email to you, but I'll also put this here. Let me get the type form link as well. Yeah, perfect. And just to set expectations, like for the resume session last week, we were able to get through about 10 examples. I think we're probably looking at about the same amount. And I think we had like 100 people submit, so we ended up just taking the first 10. So I don't know if we're going to get as many submissions, but I think we'll probably get a lot of submissions. So just kind of bear with us. Realize we've got an hour. We also are going to have to do some prep, kind of look at your stuff. So we definitely won't be able to do everybody there. I see questions about where to submit. I just put in a link for a type form where you can submit that. And then there's a, that will also, the link to that type form is also in the registration as well. Yeah. And final thing, just for folks who are interested in the cohort learning, I'll show that one more time. We had a good question early on, like, can we do anything better on pricing for somebody who already has an annual membership? And so right now through Friday, you get 25% off if you join any of the cohorts. We've had a lot of people that have gotten their employers to take the bill for that, which has been pretty awesome. But then folks who are trying to save on that, we said we would do an additional 10% off for folks who do have that annual membership already. Hey, everybody. Thank you so much for joining this session. It was a lot of fun on our end. We hope you got a lot of value out of it. Next week, we've got another awesome session with Aaron Perry. He's going to be walking you through LinkedIn profile optimization. This is really important if you're trying to get any kind of a job. Guaranteed an employer is going to look at your resume before you have that interview. So make sure you're looking great when they find you. And then 2 weeks from now, we'll have our founder, Chris Dutton. He will be walking you through the data analyst interview. That's a really fun session. It's something that a lot of folks are often intimidated by. You don't have to be. It's not that bad. And we will help you prepare so that you can look great the next time you're interviewing. If you want more information and you need to figure out how to register, they're free events. Go to mavenanalytics.io/January-Jumpstart. We hope to see you there. And again, thank you for tuning in. Hope this was valuable for you.